Welcome everybody to today's Company Fuse 3 cast. Today we will see a coaching cast of a replay Hobofingers provided. He's playing against the DAK and he plays against Wu Wei, playing against the US forces. With that, let's already give it a try. Maybe let's deactivate the fog of war, even though it should be for coaching cast. Sorry, I'm still a little bit sick. But I hope I be able to talk during the match properly. Alright, we already see the good sportsmanship, that's awesome. And what do we see here? So, the DAK is opening with the Panzer Grenadier squad. That is, I think, in my opinion, it's a good idea, because yeah, the current US forces meter is still heavily relying on the combination of the infantry support center and the combination of that with the armored battle group. And since that's the case, it's always a good idea for the US forces to open with a Willis Jeep, and the Willis Jeep is causing insane manpower bleeds to the Panzer Pioneers. However, these Panzer Grenadiers are pretty good in repelling the Willis Jeep in the early game. Really like that. Okay, so now he's going for the 10x3 point. Yeah, why not? That's good. So I'm cutting the capturing the cutoff over here. Oh. And maybe we could even pass some advices to the US forces player. I think it's not a good idea to park the scout squad over here. These guys are very effective cappers, so they have a higher capture rate than, for instance, riflemen. So I would always make sure to use them in the early game, for scouting, for instance against the Wehrmacht to figure out where MGs are, or of course for fast capping. But like that, the potential of the scout squad, which is really not good in fighting, is a little bit wasted. Alright, so the US forces are indeed opening with the armored battle group. However, he's not going for the veteran crew members for the light vehicles. And with that, the Willis Jeep is not having the capability to insta-cap in the early game, as soon as it's hitting the field. However, these guys also are strong, but I usually don't like them so much on open maps like these. I think the Willis Jeep with the Red 1 ability to be able to capture is just straight up stronger than these guys on this map. It applies differently on maps like, for instance, the Picinos, because there we have lots of corners, nooks and crannies, lots of small combat, close combat, and there they are obviously very strong. They are even broken on this map, I would say. Well, and another thing, I think the DAK player should have been chasing them over here with 250, because the 250 is superior to Willis Jeep, and as also riflemen were boned over here, I think could have been performing a very safe chase. Okay, let's pause the game over here. I mean, I like that the DK was going for the 250. However, now we see this situation. So there are 3 squads, and each of them dropped 1 model. But at the same time, they are all, more or less around 50% of health. This squad's maybe a little bit lower even. And this implies that all these models already took a lot of damage. So in this situation, once you even won the fight over here, so they are pretty much safe for some seconds at least, I think it would be the very best idea to use the 250 to heal up all these 3 squads at the same time. Maybe you could even retreat, because you are pretty close to the base, and just retreat these guys maybe over here to heal them up with the 250. 250 obviously would follow. All 3 squads would then be full health, and just 3 models, equaling maybe around 80 manpower or so, would just be provided for reinforcement. And then you could engage again with full life and full model squads. And you even could make use of the 250 to bring them to the front wherever you need one of these squads very quickly. So I think that would be the best way to make the most use of this situation at the moment. Alright, at the moment you see a second scout squad of the US forces and a mortar. That is interesting. The South Scout squad, why not? for fast capping, that is, well, it's okay. At the same time, the US forces were going for mortar in advance against the DAK. I don't know whether I like that decision, because usually the DAK is not that a heavy MG based faction, like for instance the Wehrmacht is. So at this situation, when you see you have 300 manpower, Hobofingers, so the DAK is having 300 manpower. I think in this situation when you see the heavy mortar, you already attacked to the tier 1, okay. I would probably go for 1 or maybe even 2 additional Panzer Grenadier squads. And I would, that's another recommendation, I would maybe go for the tier 2 a little bit later. Rather go for 2 additional Panzer Grenadiers. Maybe 1 additional Panzer Grenadier first. And then the tier 2, or maybe even 2 Panzer Grenadiers in the tier 2, as you see that the US forces are going for additional scout squads and a mortar. So probably they didn't tech so far. Yeah, and make them most use of the strength of the Panzer Grenadiers with the combined arms buff in the early game. I think that is stronger than rush the tech, because the tech as such isn't giving you an advantage. You first need to squeeze out some units from this building. Yeah, now I'm curious what you're doing. I assume that you go for the tier 2 tech to rush the flak half track. That could be pretty strong, however you can't quite afford it fuel-wise at the moment, but I think the fuel will come in pretty fast, so let's see. Oh, you can, okay, you're going from MG? That is not a good decision, because you already noticed that there is a mortar on the field, so you are pretty much now deploying the unit that is already countered by the US forces player. So you're pretty much playing that what he wants you to do. I think in this situation even more would rather be better to go for additional Panzer Grenadiers. However, I also want to point out that now, as you already decided to go for the support weapon over here, I think for the DAK, even though that's maybe not the very best map for that strat, it could be good for to go for the Italian infantry battle group, because over here you have this prepared positions buff, which is, yeah, increasing the strength, the sturdiness of your support weapons. So MGs, anti-tank guns, mortars, all this stuff is then very much better. And I really like this buff because it's very powerful actually, and since the US forces player already showed that he is willing to go for mortars, I think this buff could more or less, not quite counter, but yeah, fight this play a little bit when you're going for support weapons. Even more since you have access to several barrages to, yeah, maybe just scout a mortar pit, mortar units or stuff like that, and just yeah, repair them really quick using one of these abilities. So if you're now going for the MG, it could maybe be a good idea to go for several MGs, since you don't have many Panzer Grenadiers or many main and infantry units. You could buff up with techs, like for instance the tier 2 tech 6-man upgrade for the Panzer Grenadiers is maybe not quite an option at the moment, because you don't have enough Panzer Grenadiers. Also things like the breeders over here is maybe not a good option at the moment, because you just have one squad that would benefit from this at the moment. Yeah, this battle group is not affected by the play at the moment, I would say. Yeah, but maybe now, since you are going for the MG, several MGs maybe, then several anti-tank guns maybe as well. Tier 2, maybe flak feeling, and then tier 4 Panzer 3 rush could be an option. Well, let's see what happens next. The US forces player is having not quite the map control they should have at the moment. Oh, and there's the very late Willis Jeep, interesting. I would rather recommend to go for the Willis Jeep first when you're playing the US forces armored battle group, because you can, as I already pointed out, have access to the tech, and then it's able to cap in the very early game, and that can be very strong. Also, the fight power of the Willis Jeep can be very strong.
Panzer pioneers have taken the location.
Our munitions point is being neutralized by the enemy.
Especially against the DAK, because of the Panzer Pioneers. Ooh, that is quite a waste of the Willis Jeep, isn't it? Is it coming away? Okay, it's probably coming away.
We have been cut off. Re-establish a connection.
Yeah, the scout squads are not good at fighting. Yeah, they rather should be used for scouting and capping. Yeah, like over here, that's a good use of the scout squad. Yeah.
We are losing grasp of a strategic point.
All right. Interestingly, the US force player is not having in use of the heal ability or the repair ability. That's
A
good.
capture point is being taken from us.
The US force player is not having access to heal at the moment. Oh, and he's going for the tier 1 and 2 build. Yeah, so maybe he wants to squeeze out some suit squads to deal with the early light and medium armor of the DAK.
The enemy have claimed our sector.
Finally he's gaining some map control, that's good. Okay, on the other hand, what's also very nice is that the DAK is now having access to the 2 16x fuel points, ammunition points. In my opinion, that is very strong, and US forces player always should try to prevent that, because the DAK is probably one of the factions that benefit the most from, yeah, surplus of ammunition. And why is that? Yeah, usually I would say, for instance, the Panzer Grenadiers, if you want to upgrade them with the LMG 34, that costs 100 pieces of ammunition, and they are not too strong compared to riflemen. Indeed, riflemen, in my opinion, are just way stronger because they are very cheap, and with the bars they just shred everything. However, the Panzer Grenadiers with the combined arms buff and the LMG 34 are equally as good as the riflemen, maybe even a little bit better on long range. And we check that on long range, Panzer Grenadiers win short range if the riflemen have a good advantage, even in late game and equal wet and stuff like that. Riflemen still win. I think that's still a balance issue, but no doubt, I mean, everybody knows that the US forces are still the strongest faction they have ever been. So, yeah, that's nothing new. Anyway, ammunition is a good thing for the DAK. Now we see that it was maybe not the best idea to go for the MG, because the US force already got the mortar.
We have vehicles available in reserve.
So surplus of ammunition is also important for the DAK, because you not just may have access to the MGs then. Ooh, that was a little bit too greedy.
MG-34 team killed in action.
No, but also the DAK wants to plant mines as well. Other factions can do that. Other factions like the Wehrmacht or the US forces even can spam mines, because they usually don't have issues with the ammunition. Okay. Yeah, and also some abilities like, for instance, if you want to have access to the Loiter, it's so incredibly expensive. You need to really push for the ammunition to properly make use of this ability. Yeah. Well, another thing I would like to point out now is it is indeed a very interesting DAK build. I mean, you decide to go for the heavy MG, and I think since you didn't pick in the battle group now or yet, you could have made use of this unit a little bit better by picking the Italian battle group. With that, you may already have been squeezing out some baby tanks instead of taking and going for the Achtrad, because the baby tanks, yeah, they are not so bad actually. And as you now already noticed that he's going for the mortar, and several scout squads, as well as the very late Willis Jeep, and the very late Willis Jeep indeed would be something that would make me maybe go for the baby tanks just to punish that. Yeah, you could try to go for that, and again maybe back them up with anti-tank guns using the prepared positions now. Anyway, oh, and they are also more or less countering the M8 Greyhound, so as soon as the Chaffee comes out it's becoming a little bit sticky, but by this time you could already have some anti-tank guns, or of course the tank hunters. However, now you decided to go for the tier 3 in addition to the tier 2. The only unit you used for the tier 2 was the MG so far, so the tier 2 not quite so useful at the moment. Ah, the British Jeep died, very nice. But I think when you plan your techs, always make sure to have a plan about what to get out of the tech. So the tier 2 at the moment is not quite that useful. Obviously you wanted to have that to go for the tier 3, that's fine. When you now want to go for some Achtrads, I mean they're obviously strong. And you already could back them up using these tank hunters, that is also, yeah, it's also good enough. And alright, so I mean you go, you went for some autocannon conversions over here for the 250s. And then 250/9 armored half-tracks with the nice gun on top. That can set up a lot of pressure with the US forces, especially compared with the Achtrad, because M8s and also Chafees could die when you use all of these units at once. However, in my opinion, the DAK is not quite benefiting from this build so much, because now I think you maybe need to go for the medical truck. I mean, you can afford it, but usually the DAK is having a lot of manpower issues. And when playing the DAK, you usually want to have all the available manpower you can have. So, okay, now you're going for the medical truck, yeah, indeed. So, when you don't go for the tech, and with that you save 150 manpower, and if you save the medical truck, then you have two 250s, and with them you have enough heal capabilities. So I would rather recommend to do that instead of going for the conversion and for the medical truck. I think it's more effective to do so, but rather go for some especially now some additional Panzer Grenadiers, and maybe then rather go for the grenades to have snare capabilities. I think that's better. In combination with some called anti-tank guns, or maybe even deployed anti-tank guns and the tank hunters, because then you obviously are able to not just repel enemy armor, but also potentially even kill it. Well, now you went for the Bredas, and you indeed more or less picked this battle group to rush for them. That's a very questionable choice, because you just have one unit that's benefiting from this entire tech tree now. So you basically picked a battle group to just get one breeder. That's pretty weak. But since you now see that the US forces are going for the Zook squads over here, you indeed don't necessarily need a Marder or the Semovente assault gun too early. So maybe that was not the worst idea to not go for this tech tree over here. But at the same time, I think it still would have been better to go for that because of the pizza tanks. And also the Pact of Steel, of course. I mean, you already have some medium vehicles, but you could have been going for the Pact of Steel. Rush this skill tree, go for some pizza tank spam, tech for the tier 4 as soon as possible, and squeeze out the I think it's the ability over here, I forgot the name, but that your light and or generally your vehicles are able to cap territories. That could be insanely strong now when you have already 3 mobile and potentially pretty dangerous vehicles The pizza tanks on top. Could deal with Jeffies as well. With the tank hunters in combination is pretty strong. You don't necessarily need more infantry. And since you don't have that much infantry, or now you are building some infantry, so it's becoming better. But at the very moment you pick this battle group, you just had one Panzer Grenadier squad, 2 Panzer Pioneer squads, the MG and the tank hunters. And I think that is not so much infantry basically. You could have been just rushing for the tier 4, get the tech, and then use your light armor to cap territories and squeeze out some pizza tanks, and I think that would have been stronger.
Proximity alarm near our munitions
Well,
point.
next engagement is just about to happen, I think. No? Oh, they are retreating again.
Repairs completed.
Ah, yeah, to repair, okay.
Repairs completed.
US forces are
Proximity alarm near our victory
slowly
point.
gaining some map control.
Victory
Oh, okay,
point
they are
under
setting up
enemy
sandbags over
control.
here.
We're losing grasp of
I
the
would
capture point.
like to pause over here to point something out. So, I think that is not quite a good position for setting up sandbags, if the US Forces player is watching this video. Because, yeah, you have this high ground advantage over here already, and there's green cover as well, so you don't quite need the sandbags that are a little bit more ahead to the enemy front, but yeah, not quite that much. This position over here would be strong anyway. Oh, ooh, okay. And that is useless indeed, because the opponent, so in this case the DAK player, could just use this green cover if he wants to use it. Anyway, the barbed wire is not hampering it, or hampering him from doing so. So yeah, maybe that is not a good idea. Anyway, an anti-tank gun in addition to the tank hunters. Sure, good. Why not? Oh, these guys could die now. Ah, yeah, and Chaffee, anti-tank gun, and Zook squad. Ooh, but that is a very bad engagement with the Chaffee. I think it's dead. I think when the autocannons hit the back, they will deal some damage. The Achtat is dealing damage anyway. Ooh, and there are the tank hunters in there as well. And I think he went for the snares. Yep, so well, you can snare the... Yeah, okay, it's dead. It is a dead Chaffee. That's very good, because I don't like the US forces. I'm not quite a Wehraboo, even though I'm practicing the Wehrmacht at the moment. Some people lately like to call me a Wehraboo due to that. But everybody should know that I play all factions, and I'm rank 50 or so with all factions, so it's not quite true, but I always like to point out that the US forces are still just the strongest faction. Yeah, so... yeah, I have to admit I don't like the US forces, especially when the full meta is used
Command points are available for use.
on top of the strength of the US forces. Oh, nice, the mortar conversion. That is quite a bad idea, because you already may have noticed that he's going for the anti-tank gun and the mortar as well, so yeah, mortar conversion for the 250 is a pretty decent idea. Okay, I think it's GG now. US forces probably even went AFK now. Oh. Should further engage instead of retreating here. Could have survived them. Oh! Nice! Have a machine gun fighting position, that's awesome. Never see that. Yeah, so I think it's GG now. And yeah, I mean, for this replay there are not that many advices I could give, because I mean, we won that anyway, more or less with ease, but there was a high skill difference, or at least rank difference, but also skill difference, I would say, between you guys, so yeah, I think it's not quite a surprise that the match went like that, but at the same time, it is very nice to see this DAK build. it is... Yeah, I mean it worked, but I think against an equally skilled player it probably wouldn't, because the decay is... it is better than it used to be, and it is not super weak anymore, but it is still the weakest faction. Not by far, but it's slightly weaker than the other factions. So maybe this build could have been pretty dangerous. But I think I already pointed out what I would do other at the certain situations of the game. Oh, US Force player didn't went AFK so far.
Panzer
That's
3 is
no
awaiting orders.
But there's the Panzer 3 here. I think we could try to point out the most important things of this match, so that the next game, Hobofingers playing against, yeah, let's say an equally skilled US Forces player, that this game is also successful. Let's say I hope that it will be. It would be very nice, and I think for that the most important things you should focus on is to try to avoid deploying the 252 medical truck, if possible, because it's just too expensive for the DLK to afford. The US forces will just out-spam you on any means. Like, for instance, they will have anti-tank capabilities as soon as you will have them. They will have anti-infantry firepower that is way stronger than your firepower at all at the same time. So as soon as you go for the... even if you dodge the medical truck, you probably will struggle with keeping up with the strength of the US forces, because everything you can deploy will already be deployed by the US forces, but in a better way. So try to dodge this unit to to actually survive against the US forces, and try to align your build a little bit better with the battle group you choose. So, for instance, when you decide to just go for little infantry, like for instance just one Panzer Grenadier, 2 Panzer Pioneers, the Tank Hunter and the MG, you probably should choose another battle group, but this one over here. The Italian infantry battle group, I think, as I already pointed out, is maybe a good idea. Then you can squeeze out some anti-tank guns, MGs, make use of the buff for the support weapons. Maybe even go for Custodores if the enemy is using some MGs and some garrisons, like over here. Then will be dead in no time. So pretty good battle group for your build, more or less. Yeah, I mean, I lately often see that the DAK players are going for the 250 conversion. I really like that, because it's spicing up every game. It's really funny to see that. But I don't consider it to be so strong. I think there are better ways of playing the DAK. And it's a little bit situational when you should go for the conversion, because as I said, the 250s in my opinion are better used to heal up your units. At the same time you can make a clown car out of these things, and the clown car in my opinion is just stronger than the autocannon conversion. So I think that's the most use of the 250s, to not go for the tech, even though they have more armor than. But the clown car, as I said, is strong. And the heal is, yeah, very necessary, let's say, to survive as the DAK. Yeah, and what else could we say? One thing that's coming to my mind is that you opened with 2 Panzer Pioneers. That is something I always like to do, especially when I'm a little bit tired. So for instance, when I come from work or so and I'm not in quite the best shape to play competitive heroes, then I usually also go for the double Panzer Pioneer opener. But usually it is the better idea to go for the Kratzschützen, because the Kratzschützen, they are super fast. So they give you an amazing capping capability. And on this map, I think it's even stronger because that is such a wide map. Like, for instance, from here to here, it's, yeah, an amazingly huge area that you need to deal with. And the the Kratzschützen are able to, yeah, to cap like over here a little bit, and if there's some threat coming up over here, they are very fast, so they most likely will evade. And then you can just move like over here using follow-up commands, then cap something like over here. And especially in the early game on this map, I would use the Kratzschützen like to first cap this point, then the cutoff over here, and then the 16 times ammunition point, because yeah, as I already pointed out, the DAK really needs the ammunition. It's more, I think that's most likely one of the most important resources for the DAK, so always try to go for this point over here after you cap the cutoff. Don't go for the 10 times fuel point versus the US forces, because you will lose your initial engagement over here, because the US forces usually, in my opinion, will go for this point because they will win over here using riflemen. And yeah, usually I would avoid to go for this point at the early game, but rather go for this point and then maybe try to defend the cutoff over here. Then that is not quite an easy task, because the US forces will have the high ground advantage over here to engage this point, but and also this truck over here. But as long as they just use the green cover and the high ground advantage over here, or the green cover of this truck over here, yeah, they won't be able to cap this point. And maybe if you just use the Kratzschützen to fire from this direction, and maybe a Panzergrenadier to fire from one of the cover positions over here or so to defend this point, then you'll be fine. At the same time, you can use your Panzer Pioneer squad and Panzer Grenadier squads and a 250 to engage like over here a little bit. I think, yeah, that the defending of the cutoff obviously doesn't work quite well against the Willis Jeep over here, and several US forces player will most likely go for this cutoff and this cutoff, maybe this cutoff first and then this cutoff using the Willis Jeep, maybe even squeeze some damage out for the Panzer Pioneers. But yeah, still I think that's better when you use the Kratzschützen, because the Kratzschützen are fast anyway, so it doesn't hurt you when you go for this cap over here, because even if you lose the cutoff over here, the Kratzschützen will just be able to go like over here, cap these 3 points, this one, this one, this one, probably you already had this one, but this one and this one. At the same time you can engage with 250, 1 or 2 Panzer Grenadiers, 1 Panzer Pioneer by this time, to keep up the pressure over here. And if the US forces player, for instance, then is trying to occupy these buildings to intervene with your idea of capping this side of the map, yeah, by this time you already have enough ammunition to get yourself a flamethrower to deal with the garrisons over here. So, in my opinion, that is a good capping order. And the Kratzschützen are certainly a very strong unit in the early game for the DAK. And, yeah. Now it's GG, isn't it? Yeah, and don't go for an MG, yeah, GG. Don't go for an MG if you already noticed that your enemy is going for the very counter. Anyway, GG, well played, both of you guys, and with that, let's see you next time. Have a good time. Ooh, see you.